Hello everyone. Thanks for joining me for some helpful hints to consider when coding for mental disorders this week. This chapter is pretty straightforward and students usually do pretty well with it. Let's take a look at an example from exercise 15.1. Here we have bipolar affective disorder, most recent episode mixed, in partial remission. So let's begin in the alphabetic index in our CM codebook with the main term of disorder. Then we will find the subterm of bipolar. And then actually the subterms do a really good job of pulling everything else in from this particular diagnosis. So under bipolar, we're going to find another subterm for in remission. And under in remission, there's even another subterm, in partial remission, which matches our diagnosis, with the current episode or most recent episode of mixed. F31.77 is our final diagnosis here, and then of course go confirm that in the tabular list and check for instructional notes. Let's go ahead and take a look at another example, this time from exercise 15.2. Here we have acute delirium resulting from pneumonia due to Haemophilus influenza. Let's start with the main term of delirium. And then followed by the subterm due to, because we know what's going on here. As we scroll through the subterms, there is no due to Haemophilus influenzae, but there is an applicable subterm here due to general medical condition F05. Now I bet you can take a good guess of what kind of instructional note we're going to find for F05 when we check the tabular list. So here's our tabular list for F05, and you guessed it. Code first the underlying physiological condition, which of course is the pneumonia. So we will head back to the alphabetic index for our main term of pneumonia, subterm in or due to, and as we scroll down here we find Haemophilus influenza, which leads us to code J14. So if you go back and check the tabular, you will find that J14 is our correct code. So the final two codes are J14 would be sequenced first because it says to code first that underlying condition, and then we'll pull in the F05 code as the second code for the delirium. In this week's reading, you will note that substance abuse disorders are also coded to the mental health disorders chapter. When considering substance abuse disorders surrounding alcohol and drugs, it's important to know in the CM codebook that abuse and dependence are coded uniquely. So abuse does not mean dependence, and dependence does not mean abuse. The important factors to consider here are the main symptoms of tolerance and withdrawal. Dependence diagnoses are always differentiated from abuse diagnoses in that dependence coding means that the patient is experiencing these tolerance or withdrawal symptoms such as tremors or irritability, seizures, poor sleep, and even hallucinations. So abuse just simply means the reoccurring use of a substance despite the negative consequences, but we don't have those tolerance and withdrawal symptoms happening. Also, when considering this topic of coding for substance abuse disorders, it's important to understand the substance abuse dependence code hierarchy. Basically, what this is telling you is to default to the highest level of seriousness. So for an example, and this is found in your textbook as well, if both use and abuse are documented, then assign only the code for the abuse. If both abuse and dependence are documented, assign only the code for dependence. Again, go to that higher level of seriousness. If use, abuse, and dependence are documented, assign only the code for dependence. And if use and dependence are documented, again, assign only the code for the dependence. As usual, thanks for joining me this week. Please remember to post to the Coding Roundtable if you have any questions along the way while you're working through your exercises. And even if you don't have questions, it is always a good idea to read through any posts there each week. There's lots of great things to learn there. So hopefully many of you are taking advantage of that opportunity. Have a great week. Happy coding.